The Frituals, written and performed by author Caitlin Costello. Chapter 30. Tetra. Tetra paces back and forth across the floor. She counts as she walks. 6 steps one way, 6 steps the other way. She pauses at the end of her current patrol to stop and stare at the man across the hall. What is the point of this? We were fine as we were. She gestures to the empty cell around her. In the night, when they were peacefully sleeping, well, as peacefully as one can sleep on a pile of hay, guards came to take away her father and Moraine. There had been no warning, no reason to suspect that something was to happen. Where are they? Tetra snaps. The guard continues to look off into space, completely ignoring her. His helmet covers his face, so she can't see any expression from him. Listen to me. Where are they? She grabs the bar, getting as close as she can. Answer me. The guard glances in her direction. I wouldn't do that if I were you, he says, and then turns away. Why? She looks at her hands and sees the black coils leaving the point where the locking spell had been placed. What the... She steps back and watches with a mixture of fear and fascination as the coils break and float towards her. I told you, says the guard. His eyes flicker toward her for a moment. Help me, she says, trying desperately not to be backed into a corner. I can't. Yes, you can. Just open the door and come in here, she demands, fear gaining an edge in her voice. The guard turns to her, the facade of disinterest starting to fail. Tetra, I do wish I could help, but they have my family. If I help you, then... The guard pulls off his helmet, his face full of earnest desire and a plea for sympathy. He stops as the sound of running feet comes down the hall. The guard takes a step back, his face falling back into a mask of disinterest as he slips the helmet back on. Boiling anger floods Tetra at the sight of her sister's friend, and she grips the bars harder. Ward, what is going on here? Why did the alarms go off? Ward snaps to attention, his hands flat at his sides. Sir, my watch is quite agitated after having been separated. How else would you expect me to react? Where the hell are... She ends her sentence with a yelp as the coil wraps around her wrists, pulling them to her waist. Please stop this! Ward continues as though Tetra never interrupted him. As you can see, there is no need for alarm. She is not going anywhere. The officer nods. Good. Keep up the good work. I will find someone to switch with you soon. Your watch is almost up. Ward nods. It is an honor to serve those who will bring back what is right. He bows low, his right hand crossed over his chest. He stays bent until the officer's footsteps fade away. How do I get this thing off me? Tetra asks, struggling in her cell as she desperately tries to grab the edge of a coil. Damn it, Ward, you better tell me. If your father knew what you were doing... Ward steps close to the bars, tossing his helmet to the floor. My father already knows. I have had to guard his cell twice already. Damn it, Tetra, this wasn't my choice. He rubs his hands over his face. Okay, stop. Stop struggling. When she struggles more, he hisses. Tetra, stop. She freezes. It will keep winding around you more and more until you can't move if you keep struggling like that. The moment it senses you have stopped struggling, it will begin to fall away slowly. The coils are made of magic. They are designed, if you will, to feel the emotions of their captive. Where did you hear this nonsense? She asks, taking deep breaths, trying not to move as the coil creeps up her shoulder. I learned it from them. When they took me, they taught me their ways. I learned their commands and the proper signs of respect. I learned their hierarchy and a great many more things. So please, relax. You will be free soon. Tetra fixes on the smooth cadence in his voice. This makes sense, and as he speaks, she realizes it could be quite useful. How much would you say you know about them? The first of the coils falls off her skin. Enough to get by without a possible thrashing, he replies. How about you get me out of here, and we can get together? We can get our families out together. The coils start floating back to the alarm on the disc on the door. And how the hell will that work? You saw what happened when you touched the alarm. They will know instantly. What about Omar? Ward winces. My father. I want to say he will be all right, but Tay, he can't help in a rebellion. No, but others will. What is happening isn't right. And as far as I can tell, none of you boys want to be doing this. No, there are a few bastards that think this will help them. But by the goddess, I hope not. Tetra sits down and begins to sketch a crude floor plan on the cell floor. Well, then let's get planning and figure out a way to get those out that deserve it. Chapter 31. Baron. Baron rushes along the busy road, the poor bumping into him as he goes. Hey, watch it, one says after they bump into Baron. He just nods and continues to the end of the road, back to the inn. Per usual, Mr. Jansen waves at him as he comes through the door, but Baron just shakes his head and continues down the hall to his room. Baron knocks lightly on the door before coming into his room. Alois sits on the bed, his head buried in a book. You know, you can come out of the inn. No one is holding you in here. I know, the elf says, not looking up from his book. I feel like I can do more from here. Baron rolls his eyes, taking off his coat and hanging it up on the coat rack. You came so you could help me, and so that you could get out of that cell. And now you haven't even gone outside. You are going with me tonight. Alois closes his book. Slowly his eyes lift to meet Baron. Do you want to know the truth? Baron comes and sits down next to him on the bed. Yes, I would. I really would. You are my friend. You can tell me whatever it is that is wrong. I am afraid, Alois says meekly. I am afraid to go see what it is like. He turns the book over and over in his hands. I'm scared of how much the city will have changed from when I used to live here. No one I know is here. My monastery was destroyed. What is left for me? Baron doesn't quite know what to say to that. He had been lost when he had first started to explore the city. Not every street that Alois had put on the map was still there, while other roads hadn't existed, had been created where the buildings had fallen. It had taken some getting used to, but Baron had been able to create an updated map to explore the city with. I know, this isn't the city I knew either, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe now that the people have been stirred up more, the Fritual will come out. Alois shrugs and opens his wardrobe and puts the book away. He pulls out another and opens it and carries it over to the desk. He lays the book on the table and pulls out a jar of ink and his quill. Wait, Baron says, covering the blank pages with his hand. Before you make a new entry for today in your journal, you need to see at least part of the city. We won't go far, I promise. Then you'll be able to take note of something you actually saw versus just things you heard me talk about. Alois sighs. Boy, there is something about you that I love. That is also the same thing that sometimes I despise about you. Baron grins mischievously and scoops up Alois's notebook. You never stop going and pushing. You like to push people's buttons, don't you? Baron pops up and puts the journal back on the shelf in the wardrobe. Maybe I do, but maybe I like seeing people go out and do things that I know they'll enjoy. Come on, grab your cloak. Grab your boots. I know somewhere I have to take you, Baron says, turning and grabbing Alois's and his own cloak off the hook. Alois looks at the cloak like it is something that he is going to regret doing. Come on, I swear, it'll be something you will enjoy. It's a place you told me you used to visit a lot. Where? Alois asks, pulling the cloak over his shoulders. I thought just about everything was gone. I said just about, not all, Baron replies, pulling their door open. He hurries down the stairs and into the yard where he waits for Alois to make his way down the stairs. Baron had found this location after days of searching. The city was a maze of slums and squalor, but it still had some features of the white marbled beauty that had covered the city at one time. Alois pads out of the building, squinting at the bright sunlight upon his face. Baron smiles as Alois pauses and turns his head to the sky, letting the sun soak into his face. His eyelids flutter as they adjust to the lighting shining through his eyelashes. I can't get enough of this, Alois murmurs. He slowly opens his eyes, letting them readjust before heading over to join Baron. You would be able to get more of it if you came outside. He puts up a hand and silences Alois before the words can slip from his mouth. And opening your window doesn't count. Baron laughs at the look that falls over Alois's face. It isn't one that someone would expect from an elf as old as Alois. You are a stubborn elf, aren't you? Alois says, walking beside Baron. Baron just laughs and smiles and signals for his friend to walk with him down the road to the left of the inn. Alois's eyes are wide as he takes in the sights of the city. Baron thinks of how his heart had leapt and fell as he walked through the city of his youth. It had changed drastically over the last 5 years. There was one place in particular Alois had spoken about in his time in the cell of the fortress. Baron had spent the better half of the previous afternoon searching for it. Scanning his map, he had crisscrossed the area of new roads and ones that had been destroyed by the invasion of the Dark Ones. Baron had been careful as he traveled. He was sure that his father had sent some men after him to make sure that Baron was doing the mission that he had been sanctioned. It wasn't hard to tell that they were there the first time. They hadn't planned it very well. They showed up in the all-black uniforms they were given. And when people saw them, the enemies that had destroyed their home, they fled. Some ran screaming, others scooped up children, or slowly backed away, eyeing them up and down like they were going to pounce on them any second. Baron's tales quickly learned to change up their look. They bought simpler clothes and laid low for a bit. But by that time, they'd realized their mistake. Most people had spread the news of what they looked like to the rest of the people. Baron scans the busy road. He had only had one real run-in with them. It was his second morning in Bulandon when he'd ran into them in the black garb. They had all frozen, staring at each other. And they grabbed their blades. When they continued on, it was very tense, with many a glance over his shoulder to make sure that the two weren't following him. He had kept on with his day, but he had been wary. Whenever he had stopped somewhere, he had turned in a circle, scanning for people. Others had noticed his paranoia, of course, but when he simply said he had thought he'd seen a member of the Dark Ones in the vicinity, other people switched to the offense. Since then, he occasionally would drop this line when he could feel them sneaking up on him, watching his every move. So, when are you going to tell me where we are going? Alois asks. Baron glances over at his friend. You will know exactly where we are going when we get a bit closer. Alois eyes him, glancing around the area. Baron can tell that not much of it is familiar, but Baron could see the occasional flash of recognition from Alois. That might have been one of the smallest details, but his eyes widened ever so slightly with each gargoyle high on the wall, or designs set into the uneven cobblestone street. We're going to turn right here, Baron says, pointing to the right down a small alleyway. Alois stopped walking. You found it? He asks, his body leaned toward the alleyway, ready to move as soon as he lets himself. But he is tense from head to toe, afraid to move to the place of his past. I did, Baron replies. It was sort of hard to find, but once I found it, it seemed obvious where it would be. He starts to take a step forward, then realizes just how tense his friend is. Do you want to go? We can go look at some other stuff first. No, Alois says. His eyes are in the past. No, I want to go. I just need a moment. He looks around the entrance to the alley, trailing a hand down the wall, remembering the uneven texture of the stones beneath his finger. It seems like it was so much longer than 5 years. I know, Baron says, placing a hand on his shoulder. Take however much time you need. Alois shakes his head. No, we don't have to wait. I am ready, he says, turning to Baron. Let's go. Baron nods and the two turn. Baron lets Alois lead so he can go at the pace he needs to go. The ground beneath their feet is torn and uneven where the ivy and hedges had been ripped up. Alois slides his hand over the walls, tracing the now faded words that are etched in soft cursive. Spiriato Fritual Bulandin, Alois whispers as his fingers run over the words. Alois continues past the words, then pauses just before the opening to the courtyard beyond. Baron, do you know if anyone else has been found? Baron shakes his head. It's something I am working on, trying to find out. I don't know what happened to them, whether they ran away to safety or... I will find out for you. Alois nods and looks forward. He takes a deep breath, then steps in. When Baron's eyes adjust, he can see the clearing as Alois must have seen it nearly every day when he was a monk to the spirit ritual. He would come into this courtyard to read and write, and on nice days he would have eaten and watched the birds flit around the fountain. Alois had told Baron that at one point the fountain had sent water 10 feet into the air, misting the water out to the rest of the courtyard. Now the water is stagnant, turned a deep green as moss grows across the fountain's base and up to the second bowl. Alois steps over the cracked, uneven cobblestones and sits on the edge of the fountain. His eyes drift around, and Baron can't help but think he sees both worlds at once. Part of him wants to speak to Alois, but he feels that he shouldn't pull him from this moment. It was a time he would want to remember so he could write down every detail. Baron didn't want his friend to forget his world, as it was, and what it had changed into. Brother Bruno used to sit over there, Alois says, pointing at a stone bench that has fallen, the broken halves stabbing the sky. He would write for hours, and sing as he did. I never understood how he could focus on both things at once. He always liked to sing the hymns about hate. It was another thing I couldn't understand. It did sound good when he said them in his deep baritone, but they were so sad and somber. It was never the type of song I thought to sing when you would be sitting out here. He pats the edge of the fountain. I wanted to bring the Fritual here, to sit him or her down and show them all of the books that I loved, and the books that had taught me so much about what they were and what they could be. Baron comes and sits down beside him on the fountain's edge. You never know. You could still get that chance. He glances around. I mean, that is the whole point of us being here, right? What would you want to tell them if it was them sitting here beside you instead of me? Alois closes his eyes and leans back like he is cataloging everything he knows and decides what he would want to tell them first. I would tell them how special they are, that they are so different from the others. Their powers are in the realm of, well, obviously the spiritual versus the physical. They can... He pauses suddenly, and when Baron's eyebrows knit in confusion at the sudden pause, Alois nods in the direction of the wall through which they had come. The two dark ones that had been tailing Baron for days were standing there in the archway. Lord Baron, the one on the left says, casually resting his hands, one on his hip, the other on the pommel of his sword. He makes it look like it is nothing, but Baron knew from the many different training sessions he had gone through that the elf could pull that sword out at a blink of an eye. I don't believe that this was the mission that Lord Nerzan sent you on. Baron bites his lip, trying hard not to respond with the fact that neither he nor his father were actually lords. I didn't know my father sent a pair of nannies to watch over me while I was away, he retorts, rising from his seat on the fountain. He wasn't going to let them think they were scolding him like a child. Your father wants to be allowed to trust you, but his generals advised him that it would be a good idea to make sure that you were doing your job, the second guard says. He is not as well trained as his partner. He grips the blade, his knuckles white from the force of holding his sword. I have slowly been searching and scanning the city. If you hadn't remembered, none of us have been in the city for 5 years. Baron snaps. He has no patience for these bullies. Many things have changed. I don't appreciate you following me around everywhere I go. It makes it rather difficult for me to get people to trust me when a pair of men who are supposed dark ones are following me. The two guards shrug, not caring at all. I have been learning the land and starting my search. Alois has been sitting in the room for days while I go around. So as I had come across this location as I traveled, I knew this place would give me some information to look out for. As he speaks, the two guards slowly shrink. Alois turns and is watching him as he speaks. Do you even realize where we are? How dare you think that this is not me working for the good of the mission? So why should you think following me was a good idea? If someone sees us here, they will not talk to me, and then that will be on you. I don't think my father would appreciate that fact, too. Baron's chest rises and falls in anger that he didn't realize he feels. Pushing it aside, he turns to Alois, who is giving him a queer look of pride, but almost fear. Maybe we did make a mistake, the elf on the left says. There isn't a way you can correctly work if we are hovering. Baron tries to keep a straight face, but he has to glance over at Alois. As he watches the two dark ones, their faces are falling into a soft, droopy look, almost like they are falling into a deep trance in front of them. We should go, the second one says, grabbing the arm of the first. Come on, let's leave Lord Baron to himself. They walk with arms that swing limply at their sides. It's like someone has reached in and wiped away any trace of a mission from their minds, and instead filled them with doubt and cowardice. Alois and Baron watch in amazement as the two guards turn and walk down the alleyway and out the door, without so much as a single glance back over at the pair by the fountain. Baron turns to Alois, a mix of fear, understanding, and confusion played out on his face. Alois, what the hell just happened? Till All the Stars Are Found, my newest book is now available for pre-order. This young adult science fiction novel will be published on March 6th, 2021. Click the link in the show notes to see where you can pick up the book today. While I have you here, I wanted to share the back matter of the book. Joining the Galactic Garrison was the best decision that Ada Gomez ever made for herself. Or so she thought. Orphaned with her brother Sarkis in the foster system, who she can't claim custody of, a guardian who is days from kicking her out, and no job. There is nothing left for her on planet Earth. The only thing going for her is that she has made it. After 3 years of work, Ada has qualified to begin training for the esteemed Special Operations Team on the Galactic Garrison Space Station. Joining the Spec Ops Division is a chance to start over, to make a name for herself. And if she plays her cards right, maybe Ada can get Sarkis back. But her journey is just beginning. Being in the Spec Ops isn't easy. It isn't supposed to be. Any sign of weakness must be squashed. Fear is the devil, and hesitation is worse than death. But some of the training doesn't add up, and any semblance of structure? It looks like Ada left that back on Earth. Ada and her team do their best to put the pieces together and figure out what exactly is going on, and roll with the punches, both mentally and physically, to come out on top. Little do they know, the hardest test is yet to come. Because this year, everything is different. Until All the Stars Are Found, a young adult science fiction novel, is now available for pre-order. Its publication date is March 6th, 2021. Hi everybody, this is Caitlin Costello, the author and narrator of the Frituals. If you've enjoyed this podcast so far, please leave a review or a rating where you listened. It really helps to get the podcast in front of more people. If you can't possibly wait for another episode of the Frituals, fear not, because the full audiobook is now available. A slew of stores, including Google Play, Apple, HiBooks, Scribd, Chirp, Kobo, Walmart, audiobooks.com, and Nook Audiobooks. And it's being added to more stores every single day. It's also available at your local library, so if you request it from your library, they should be able to get it into their system fairly quickly. I am running a sale currently on signed print editions of the book, and these are 20% off using code SPOOKY through October 31st. That is code SPOOKY through October 31st from CaitlinCostello.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. This has been a production of The Frituals, written and performed by Caitlin Costello. Text copyright 2018 to Caitlin Costello. Production copyright 2020 Caitlin Costello.